Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we are getting closer and closer to Election Day. And I'm thrilled to have with me this evening Vanessa Cardenas and Walter Tejada. Both are volunteers with Todos con Biden. Vanessa, Walter, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hello, and thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Vanessa, will you start out by telling us about the organization, how it came about, and I'd love to hear how the two of you became so passionately involved in the organization's work.
Sure. So again, thank you so much for having us on this show. The Todos con Biden effort is a volunteer grassroots effort that came together really to help elect Joe Biden as our next president. The Todos con Biden effort brings together Latino leaders from across the Commonwealth, all of us with the mission of electing a president that really respects our community. We rolled out a couple of months ago with over 100 Latino leaders, again, from all over the Commonwealth, Northern Virginia, Southern Virginia, East, West. And since then, we have been holding a number of virtual events that really speaks to the concerns that the community has. We have had a number of events around COVID in education, healthcare, etc. But I would say that the goal of this effort is to really provide opportunities for the Latino community to connect with the campaign and to feel that they are part of the campaign. And I know that Walter and I and the Latino leaders that are part of this effort are really also wanting to create a space where we can just communicate the importance of the community participating this year and voting. And also just providing information about how important it is, one, to vote, but also to get informed about the issues that Joe Biden is running on, and also about the policy solutions that we all should advocate for.
Vanessa, that's incredible. And tell us, I mean, you all really have been in formation not very long at all. Tell us a little bit about your membership and how it continues to grow in this virtual community that we're all living in right now.
Yes. So yes, like I was saying, the Todos con Biden is it's a national effort, but obviously here we have the Virginia chapter, and our members are pretty much from all over the Commonwealth. They are older folks that have been organizing for many years, but we also have a very robust youth organizing arm. One of the things that I am excited about is that we're also organizing by country of origin. So Walter here is going to tell us in a minute about his leadership around building Salvadoreños con Biden. But what we're trying to do really is incorporate into this sort of organizing, the different parts of the Latino family. Right? We are not monolith. We're very diverse. We come from different countries. What unites us is our language and our culture. And obviously in the last 4 years, what unites us also is the desire to see a change in our country. So we have really made an effort to make this effort as inclusive as possible and just really create programming that speaks to the different aspects and actually the different experiences the Latinos have here in Virginia.
That's incredible. Walter, tell us a little bit about the political evolution, if you will, and the representation in the Latino community over the last several decades.
Sure. Happy to do that. I moved to Arlington, Virginia in 1992 and began to get involved. At the time, there were a number of Latino groups that were doing festivals, ethnic festivals. There was a wonderful, large Bolivian American festival. There were Mexican festivals and all kinds of there was Latin America, but there was not one for El Salvador. So, I was born and raised in El Salvador and proud to be a Salvadoran American. And so I got involved and began to organize. We created a Salvadoran American festival, the first in the region, and attracted thousands of people. And so that began sort of sparking an interest in civic participation, little by little, gradually. People started to invite me into political campaigns, and I saw that, there didn't seem to be too many people involved. So I would date it right about when Mark Warner ran for governor the first time. First, he ran for the Senate against John Warner, Republican senator at the time, but Mark Warner came up short. And so at that time, he encouraged a lot of people to get involved. And he happens to speak Spanish. Now he speaks Argentinian Spanish, so that's another type of Spanish, but we won't get into that. But what he did is he encouraged participation in that campaign, and that opened the door so that when he ran for governor a couple of years later, we were all, the word had gotten out, we felt included, and there was some other guy named Tim Kaine who was running for lieutenant governor at the time. I happened to have been in contact with him, and he spent many years spent a good amount of time in Honduras as a missionary. So he spoke Spanish, and so he had the ability to connect directly with the community, whether it was in English or in Spanish, without missing a beat. And he continues to do that to this day. So it was a little bit of difficult because people had not been involved at that time in campaigns. But what Tim Kaine particularly did, he held a meeting in the Fairfax County Democratic Committee and hosted a meeting to bring Latino leaders that were in Orange County at that time, and encourage everyone to participate. The leaders of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee were also there. And so we had a wonderful conversation. And from there on, as they say, the rest is history. We got really involved. Mark Warner won. And when he won, we had a conversation which he wanted to host the first Latino summit in Virginia. And that was about 2001. And so it was held in his city where he lives, the city of Alexandria, at the Lee Center there, and over 400 Latinos from throughout the state of Virginia came to that event. It was really a very pivotal moment, a very key moment in time of the history of the Latino community, because there had been no other event like that, and thus began multiple relationships that continue till today. So then, as a result of that, an organization called the Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, was created that sought to connect organizations and promote Latino interests. And so then what that did also is expose other folks to campaigns and the importance of having a voice, and has not been easy, because even with what we call the family, you still have to elbow your way into the table of opportunity and say, excuse me, we want to help participate and help candidates that support the type of philosophy that is most of interest to the Latino community. In 2003, with all the involvement, I happened to run for the Arlington County Board of Supervisors in a special election. They told me I would not win, would lose badly, and will never be able to run again. Competing against two people, I won by 29 votes, the first election. And there, a number of people, even people that didn't live in Arlington, participated. And that also sparked an interest, and was one of the first Latinos elected. What we did then created what we call the Latino Democrats of Virginia, that eventually became what is now known as the Democratic Latino Organization of Virginia, the official Latino caucus of the Democratic Party of Virginia. So along the ways, we saw that there was need to join advisory commissions when possible. We have tremendous talent throughout the state. I am very tempted to name names, but I'm afraid I might leave someone out. I would tell you that there was a relatively small number of people participating, and to today we continue to advise that there's a whole lot more people participating, a lot of talented people throughout the state of Virginia. And I would just also point out that ever since Latinos began to participate in campaigns, began to promote Latino participation, we definitely cannot take the credit. We work with our coalitions and so on. But when that started, Virginia was essentially a deep red state. Today, people might refer to it as blue. We started to make it a little purple. Then now, even Virginia might not be taken so serious in a presidential election, because they might take it as a given. We don't. We never take anything as a given. That's why I'm delighted and proud to be part of Todos combined in Virginia, because it continues that civic participation that we need to make a difference in the political system, to have our voice heard and have the issues that we like at the table. And I would just add this quick comment that as Vanessa correctly and very nicely mentioned how we started, some of those events we've had have been in Spanish. Some of those events have been in Spanish and English. Some of those events have been advertised, hey, come on in. If you want to speak Spanish all of a sudden, adelante, welcome. So that people can feel their comfort. And we don't, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you've been involved forever or this is the first day ever involved, bienvenidos, welcome. So that's the kind of spirit that we've cultivated throughout the years in Virginia, and proud that we have the best of all worlds, because here in Virginia, we have people from Central America, South America, the Caribbean, North America, Mexico, and many Latinos born in the U.S. All are welcome and all are part of our effort. And so that's why, as the community has evolved, with today 62 million Latinos, 32 million eligible to vote, less than half voted in the last presidential election. So we are gung-ho and in a mission to make sure that all the eligible Latino voters vote, and to vote to elect Biden-Harris as our next president and vice president of the United States.
And I wanted to just add to something that Walter said, Lindsey. I think that people don't realize how lucky we are here in Virginia in terms of the talent, the Latino talent that's here in the Commonwealth. One of the things that I'm blown away by our group is sort of the leadership that we have. And we have people like Walter, who has been, working for many, many years and have become sort of established leaders in the Latino community, and not just in the Latino community, but beyond. But by virtue of our geography, we also have a lot of talent that, people that have worked on the Hill, young people who come to the DC area because they want to work in politics. So there is, in our group, we have veterans, we have people that have been lobbyists or are lobbyists. We have people that have worked in campaigns up and down the ballot. We have people from all over Latin America. So there's a lot of diversity in our group. But, one of the things that I am super grateful for is sort of the way that Walter and others have paved for many of us in Virginia, and just really for the path that they have created for influence within the state, and also for bringing younger folks together and just, making them part of the leadership that's in the state right now. So I think that also speaks to the organizing that we have been able to do, because since we got together, we have done a lot in terms of the events and the outreach, and just the general approach that we have to this engagement. And it's because of the talent that people bring to the table.
Yeah, and just real quick, because we wanted to make sure that our feelings, our views were clearly, and note that we issue a 2-page statement at the very beginning when we kicked off our effort in English and the same in Spanish, so that we're clear of what our purpose is, Todos Combined in Virginia. And the very first event we held to kick it off after our press conference is called Café Latino con Joe. That's to simulate the Cup of Joe events that we're having. And we have over 164 people that registered for that event. We had a DACA recipient from Harrisonburg, who was one of the panelists. We had a Roanoke representation, Virginia Beach, and of course, a couple of folks panelists in Northern Virginia. But we had multiple activists who weighed in. Our purpose at the time was to fire them up and get involved. And sure enough, just about everyone that weighed in, whether verbally, which we allow, I know in some webinars they don't, but we do, so that people can voice their concern or their opinion or their desires or what they like to help in. So we allowed that, and it turned out to be a really good event and get more people involved in this virtual world. So we're inclusive, and we want to continue to grow.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how both you spoke about the diversity within the group and the different levels of skills sets that people bring together. Because I think that in so many ways strengthens any organization. Vanessa, you touched on briefly the importance of attracting young people to the movement, to the organization, to, being active participants in our democracy. Vanessa, can you talk a little bit about how the organization is looking to do that? And Walter, I'd love to hear from you, just in general, what leaders can do in our community to better energize the youth of today, because they are incredible. We've seen them come out in so many different ways. So I'd love for both of you to address the importance of youth in our democracy, but also the importance of youth participation this year. Vanessa, will you start off?
Sure. And, I have to say that I think for the Latino community, our young people are so important. As you know, we are a very young community. The average age of a Latino is like 24 years old versus the general population, which is like 49 or something crazy like that. And in Virginia, I think the average age last time I saw was like 17 years old or close to that. So we are a very young community. And, Latinos in general are really aware of that. We are the future of this country. We're the future of the Commonwealth. And I think we have been, in many ways, the last 4 years of the Trump administration has really galvanized young people, I think, because they have seen the attacks on their community. And I think we're seeing that whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, or it is the Dreamers, or it's climate change. So in many ways, I feel that our young people are stepping up in ways just nationally that we have never seen before. Or whether when you think about even the topic of, gun control, right? So you are seeing more young leaders stepping up and saying, this is about my future. So in the way that we have been trying to harness that is that in our group, we actually have leaders that are young and that are helping organize in their communities. As you know, the Dreamers are a national force, not just in Virginia, but nationally. So they are very well represented in our group, and they are organizing around college campuses, but also thinking about how to organize high school students as well. So we've made an effort to really engage them. And I think the other piece is that, especially in the Joe Biden-Harris policy plans, they always also speak to the issues that young people care about. As I mentioned, climate change is such an important issue for this generation, and that's a central piece of the Biden-Harris policy platform. The other piece, obviously, immigration and a path to legalization for young people, Dreamers, is also a key component of it. And like I mentioned before, gun safety and making sure that people are not dying at such high levels because of the availability of guns in our communities. And I think, given where we are at this moment, the issue of just racial equity, racial justice, when it comes to police reform and all of those issues have really galvanized the community. And I think the Biden-Harris, again, policy platforms really speak to those and really provide solutions to it. And so I think it's a matter of being inclusive. It's not easy because, as you know, and I know that we're going to talk about voting in a little bit, but as you know, that younger people in general and historically have had a lot of barriers to access voting, right? So it's, we need to have sort of the extra effort to really engage them. But I think we are starting at a good place given sort of the organizing that we have seen in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Walter, I'd love to hear your take on it too. And in particular, why this year is so important that we engage young people in our democracy.
Sure. Delighted to add to the excellent description that our colleague Vanessa Cardenas just did, because she was spot on. I'll tell you, it was not by accident that we went out of our way to make sure that a younger person and a DACA recipient was a panelist in the Café Latino con Joe, to make sure that that voice is heard. And it's events like that, we are continuously always trying to get the word. For us, it doesn't matter what your status in life is. What we would like is for you to have your voice heard, to organize, and if it's a just cause, welcome. And young people can be motivated by seeing that, by allowing the opportunity to do that. And we've united efforts at times. For example, Vanessa talked about the efforts to prevent gun violence. We in the Washington Metro region, since located next to the nation's capital, many times participate in many of the marches and many of the demonstrations, and the March for Our Lives, for example. Many young people from Northern Virginia attended. That was a nonpartisan event. We worked together with Edu Futuro, an organization, the two-word organization, which mean education for the future. A lot of kids that have come out of that organization attended, and they subsequently to that have participated in a number of other activities that we've held in Loudoun County and other parts of the state, Virginia Beach. So these are ways to get to know our young people and to listen to what they're worried about, what their concerns are. And many of them understand that their parents, either they may not speak English, may not have the time to participate, and so the kids are able to do it for them. And that's another challenge that we issue many times to our young people, so that they can provide a voice for their families. And many times, we're restricted with this virtual world and the pandemic. So, but typically the Latino community, we like to do things in person. I mean, it's not unusual to see a Latino gathering, and if someone comes in and everything stops, everybody gives a kiss and a hug to each other, and after that, hello, how your family has been, and then the conversation continues. Because, and so now it's difficult to do that in the virtual world, but our young people who are many have mastered technology are able to help with that, and we are asking them all the time to help with that effort and to help us connect. So it's not easy right now. We just had a meeting in Arlington, for example, of local Latino leaders. We invited young people to help on the census. We're coming to the closing of the census then and the final stretch, and folks were pumped up because some of them, believe it or not, hadn't even heard about it and knew how what can be done rather. And so this gives them an opportunity. Many of young people took notice and have signed up to come on with wearing a mask, and accompanying census folks can go knock on doors and then maybe be part of the effort. They're more than willing to do once you let them know. So we have some of that. We are going to continue to do our events and invite folks, no matter what their status in life is, whether they are, one thing we tell people, look, if you're not a U.S. citizen, do not even think about voting. That's not going to happen. But if anyone wants to help making phone calls or distributing papers with the appropriate social distancing steps, and welcome. And so that's the kind of thing we want, and our young people recognize that. There are many dreamers who have organized throughout the colleges in Virginia. There are chapters in Virginia, UVA and William and Mary, Marymount University, where folks are able to then in their world connect. And many times some of us tap on them to help us with a database issue or some technology or social media help that we might need, and they are more than willing to help out. And so that cycle we want to continue so that we can tap in that world that is comfortable for them, that they can relate to, and then ultimately for us to motivate them to vote. Down to those who are eligible to vote, and as their families, whoever's able to vote, to understand when they can do it, who should do it, and those kinds of things. So our young people, as Vanessa mentioned, Latinos are the youngest group in the United States. And time and again, 18-year-olds there are many young people who turn 18 Latinos by the millions. And so I know that sometimes that could scare some people, but we are proud and we are going to encourage them to participate and take on the leadership roles that they should be taking and that we want them to.
That's fantastic. Just about a month ago, we had on Kids for Biden, the organization. And one thing that was so apparent that came out of that show was, kids that are participating in this particular group are as young as 5 years old, right?
Wow.
And what's incredible about it is when you see a child actively engage and stay interested, it motivates all of the adults around them, right? And same with young people. I mean, especially as we're trying to navigate this new digital world that we all are in, including right here on this show, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's such an incredible way to bring people into the fold. And I am a firm believer it's never too early to involve people in our democracy. And so it's exciting to hear how much outreach is going on and how much participation among young people is taking place.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, Lindsey, I think one of the things that we don't realize is that we're making history right now. In the last couple of years, young people, social movements are making history. And I think that's why it's so exciting for younger people now to just sort of be part of those movements, because they're seeing, they're sensing, and they're experiencing the changes that are going on right now in our community. I mean, again, COVID is not it's an example. It's obviously not something that all of us are welcoming because it just presents so many challenges. But this generation is being marked, by gun violence, by racism, and now by COVID. And I think that's just making them just more aware of what's happening in the world, but also how powerful they can be. And I think social media also has a role in that because they can get connected easier, they can mobilize their peers easier. So I think that I am just excited about what younger people are going to do moving forward, because I feel they're so much more powerful because they understand their power, and they understand the power that there is in movement and in community. And I think that the set of tools that they have and the knowledge that they bring to the table is also really powerful. And I think for the Latino community, our young people, they're interpreting for their parents. They are like helping their parents figure out what Zoom is. They're helping, like Walter said, with the technology. They're such a bridge already and are such an integral part of integrating ourselves into this community, which is why I believe that if you want to change civic engagement in our country, we have to invest in our young people, because they are the drivers in their family. They are the ones who are interpreting life to their families and their older sort of parents and just the older generation.
And I will just quickly add to piggyback on that in your show here, we were giving the young people the inside scoop. There are ways to contacting us. We welcome you with open arms to our Facebook page. Send us a message. Tell us your name. Where would you like to be involved? Adelante, bienvenido. Everyone is welcome. We'd love to have your support and participation. Many of us can learn from you, and we're not shy about that. We love to do that and work with you to make sure that we cover all the bases and make sure that Todos Combined in Virginia does everything we can through all our committees and outreach. And we have it's so tempted to say so many names because there are a lot of wonderful people that are working on this effort, but we need more. And this is not an exclusive club. We welcome everyone that wants to help. Bienvenidos todos.
Walter, thank you for that. I know at the bottom of the screen, we've been making sure that folks and our viewers today have the information to be able to contact you on Twitter and on Facebook. And we are going to come back and talk about many of the issues that are so important to our country right now, so important to the Latino community. And I look forward to that conversation right when we get back. So thank you all for being with us. Please stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Even though there is so much against us, you will see me wearing a face covering.
And even with my face covered,
you will see me
as a son,
as a friend to everyone I meet,
as a fighter for change,
as a woman who stands up for what I believe in.
So join me in wearing a face covering
to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us all together.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But I don't wanna get up. Very sad, no more that I could do this. But remember you know I usually say no, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover, and we're continuing our important conversation this evening with Vanessa Cardenas and Walter Tejada, who are both volunteers with Todos con Biden. Thank you again both for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yes.
So we had some really important discussion the first segment and talking about the importance of voting. And we are so close to the election in November. Walter, will you tell us from your perspective, because you have such an incredible and unique perspective on this, will you tell us your perspective about the importance of voting this year?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times in elections, they say this is the most important election of a lifetime. This is the most important election of the century, or, you know, almost in the history of the United States, because democracy is on the line. We have the current president that has attacked from day one, when he announced his candidacy, attacking the Latino community. From the Latino community's perspective, this is unacceptable. He's been relentless in his attacks. And so how do we change that? Well, this is a democracy, and the citizen speaker counts. The foundation of this country calls for civic participation for voting. And those citizens who are 18 years of age have registered to vote, have the constitutional right to vote. And today is a little difficult because we have a pandemic. But voting, it will be the way that we can change the political leadership of this nation and return us to the democracy that we like to elusively pursue. And so voting is what will make the difference. And in the case of the Latino community, with over 32 million eligible to vote, and less than half voted last time, Vanessa and I and Todos combined in Virginia are in a mission to make sure they get the word out, motivate, organize, pursue, motivate everyone that can vote in the Latino community, and make sure that our vote counts like with everyone else united is critically important. So this year's election is critical. We need to make sure that we learn how to vote by mail, for example, which is not necessarily different than absentee voting. And there are those who say that voting, they're trying to put fear that by voting by mail might be a problem. That's baloney. We have red states and blue states that have for generations been voting by mail with no problems at all. And we've had absentee voting in Virginia forever. So that can be done and needs to be done. No, if you feel more comfortable voting in person, many of the registrar's office in Virginia open their doors weeks in advance of the day of the election. You can put on your mask and go to that local place, make sure they have appropriate social distancing, and do your vote ahead of time. And you can vote in person. But we are suggesting to folks that if you can vote by mail, you should do that. If you have questions about that, please contact Todos con Biden in Virginia. We will be more than happy to walk you through in English or en español. Con mucho gusto le damos la bienvenida para explicarle, tiene que votar. So, you know, I can go on and on, but I know that Vanessa has another important point to add on that one. I'll stop it for now. Happy to continue in a little bit, but I know, Vanessa, this is one that you're passionate about.
Yes. Thank you, Walter. And I think everything that Walter has said is exactly right. I would just add, Lindsey, that as you know, Latinos face a lot of barriers in voting. We just spoke a little bit about how young our community is. And traditionally, historically, young people in general, not just Latinos, don't turn out as they should during election day. So that is one big sort of factor that we have to consider when you think about why Latinos are not showing up at the same rates of other communities. The other piece that really affects voting in the Latino community is also the lack of sort of information, right? Language barriers. We also know that Latinos, you know, many of them work 2-3 jobs, and they don't have the luxury like many of us do of saying, you know, I'm going to be late 2-3 hours for work because I have to go vote. So those barriers are already there, and those are the traditional barriers to voting for Latinos. Now, add to that what's happening with COVID in our community right now. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their homes. People are not being able to afford their rent. So a lot of our folks are becoming transient. You know, they're changing addresses. They're having to move. Right now, their priority is to take care of their health and of their economic situation. So COVID is presenting another layer of barriers when it comes to just the community being able to engage in the voting process. And then you have now this other process, which is voting absentee or vote by mail, which, as Walter rightly notes, has been going around in Virginia for many, many years. It's very effective, it's safe, but it is a new process for many of our folks in the community. And as both of you know, there's a lot of disinformation out there when it comes to voting, and especially bad actors that are trying to confuse the community. And we saw it already in 2016. And it's not just the Russians, there's also domestic actors that are trying, for example, to give bad information. They give like the wrong dates, or they tell people they can vote by texting, and so on and so forth. So the message here is that because of that, and because of, as Walter said, this is the most important election for our community, we have to be extra vigilant. We have to make sure that we're getting the information from credible sources. And most importantly, we have to have a plan. If we can vote early, if we can vote absentee, we should do that as soon as it's available and it's possible for us, and have a plan about how we're going to do it. And then one last point I want to make is that, a lot of this conversation about vote by mail, and I was just talking about how young our community is. When you think about even just mailing a ballot, right, or dropping it off at a post office, how many young people do you know that carry around stamps in their pocket? So just even thinking about things like that, or about the number of post offices that have been closed around the Commonwealth in the last couple of years. So there are really important questions about access, which is why the voter education piece, the voter protection piece in this election is so important, and why we all need to be really, again, vigilant about the information we get. We have to make sure we are really familiar with the process of what we need to do. And most importantly, that we have to make a plan to be able to vote this year.
Yeah, and Lindsey, if I may, real quick, when the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, in his acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention said that he wants to challenge us to bring out the best of us, and that we should not focus on bringing what the current president does, which is bring the worst of us. And that's not the American way. There is a spirit of unity and optimism that has been part of the American way, a spirit of optimism that the Latino community lives and believes. And even though we have so much challenges, we remain optimistic. We believe that the American dream is a reality, but it's not going to happen by accident. So it falls upon us that even though we are following the political process a little bit closer, we know that a lot of people don't, and that we have to explain in the most basic details how to vote, what are the process, and what will change the direction of this country, how will we make things happen, and by being present at the voting booth and electing leaders that might not do exactly what we want. They might not be the perfect candidate that we would like, but they will listen, they will make adjustments, and they have a much better future for us. And we can do that by voting. And if there's anybody that knows about it, you're looking at them. And when I first ran for the county board, my very first time, I was told that I would lose pretty badly, that I would lose so badly that I wouldn't be able to run again. And when the votes were counted, I won by 29 votes the very first time. And so, after the election, I had a number of people that said, well, we saw a lot of new voters out there, man. And I said, well, there were people who looked like Vanessa and who looked like me, who felt motivated. And so there were people who came out and voted were motivated. But at the same time, we need to build coalitions. And I didn't win just with the Latino vote. The Latino vote helped me get over the line and win. But it was in the coalition of progressive whites, young people, African Americans, voters of all kinds, women voters, elder, young at heart, all kinds of folks voting. And that's the perspective. That's why I'm a Democrat, because we are inclusive, whether you're gay, straight, or where you're from in the Latino community. We are not in the business of discriminating. We're the discriminator ourselves. So, we are fighting literally for the soul of our nation. And for all the things that Vanessa and I have done, and many people that we work with here in Virginia are exposed to local, regional, state, and national leadership. But ultimately, this is where we live. This is why we are in Todos in Virginia, to make sure that we do our part. I want to look myself in the mirror on November 4th and say I did everything I could to make sure that we change the direction. And this is why we're appealing to all Latino voters to please, if you know how that system works to vote, explain it to others. Help us. If you don't, we're happy to help you do that. So contact us at Todos Combate Virginia to our Facebook page, and we will be happy to contact you. Send us a note. You want to volunteer with us? Bienvenido. Welcome. Because voting is our voice. Si no vota, no cuenta. So if you don't vote, you don't count. And I'll just end this part of my candidacy. One of the worst things that I've lived through, it was the next day after the last election, when I went to all dejected and down to a restaurant with a friend, and sat down, and my friend told me the worst thing that anybody could say to me, the worst thing. We were talking casually. He said, in the middle of the conversation, I didn't vote because I felt my vote wouldn't count. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the worst. We come from countries where people go to vote and bullets are flying, keeping them threatening and scared, denied democracy. And here we are taking for granted our vote for freedom of election. Freedom is not free. We got to work hard for it. So, it's a way to say, vote. We need you.
Well, I love that. And one of the things I would love for the two of you to address is for those viewers out there, those voters out there, that maybe Biden wasn't their first choice. And maybe they feel discouraged because he might not be progressive enough. He might not, take on an issue that's important to them, whatever the reason may be. Can you talk to those voters and really stress the importance of not sitting this election out this year? Mm-hmm. Walter, can you touch on that? But Vanessa, I really would love to hear your thoughts too, because you nailed it. And Joe Biden keeps saying over and over again, we are fighting for the soul of our nation. And, it may not be perfect for everybody, but if we're not in that fight, if we're not voting and using that superpower, 10 years from now, when people ask us what we did in this moment, right? That's what's so important. So Walter, can you speak to those people that maybe are still thinking about whether or not they're going to get involved?
Yeah, it's understandable. I think, we all wish that every time we set out to win something that we did in the world politics, there are times when we might come up a little bit short. But we can't give up. I use the example when I first helped out Mark Warner when he ran for Senate the first time. He lost, but we participated and opened many doors for other folks down the line many of them who ran for office, including yours truly. So sometimes you might not get exactly what you want at first, but if you keep trying, you will. And in this case, I think that there was a great deal. I don't call them opponents. I call them competitors. In the primary, people competed fairly, squarely, and hard. In the end, Joe Biden emerged as the person, and folks who competed against him are now supporting him. And I would just say that there are a lot of things that many people that, for example, that supported Bernie Sanders can feel good about. And there was Sanders Biden task force that issued over 200 recommendations. Some of them are being adopted, others are being discussed more and might happen. For example, Joe Biden believes in a living wage, paying $15 an hour. He thinks this is disgrace that we're paying $17 to $25 an hour as a minimum wage. That needs to be raised, and that's one example I think that folks in Sanders camp and others wanted to do. So that's one thing, and I think that we don't give up. When I ran and won, immediately I wanted to do is affordable housing everywhere. All the low-income folks need to have affordable housing everywhere. It cost a lot of money. I learned a lot of details, frustrating, so I had to dive in, roll out my sleeve, and do what I could at the moment, and improve the quality of life for low-income immigrants and so on. That's what the challenge is for everyone who supported all the candidates. Roll up your sleeve, work together. Joe Biden, yes, he's known as a centrist, maybe like a center-left person. And it's not a bad thing when you run for elected office. It is important to have a coalition. There is a reason why the current president has been wanting to attack Biden from day one, because he's been afraid. He is the candidate that attracts independents. He is the candidate that attracts some Republicans, moderate Republicans, disenfranchised Republicans, and of course, Democrats. And so for us is to consider, what is the alternative? Where are we today? Welcome to the fight. And I'll give you one example. Joe Biden proposes in the first week of in the Biden-Harris administration that he will introduce through the legislative process comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship for many undocumented folks who have earned it, for DACA recipients, for people with temporary protected status. And that doesn't mean it'll happen automatically. When he wins, we will still roll up our sleeves and make sure that does happen, that we stay in the fight, even within our family. As I mentioned earlier, no one is willing to say, I'm going to cede power, give it to you for free. We have to elbow our way into the table of opportunity and say, excuse me, we're here, we're not leaving, aquí estamos, no nos vamos, and we need to make sure that our issues that we care for are included. And so we really invite all folks who were in other campaigns to join in. And frankly, in the Todos combined in Virginia, there were folks who supported many other candidates that are now part of it. And so we welcome them as if they've been together forever in the campaign, or where they just started with forever. So this is the time that if we really are going to make a difference, saying the word united alone isn't enough. It's a difficult word to live up to. It's easy to say, but when we say united, what exactly does that mean? As I mentioned before, on November 4th, all of us hopefully we'll know the result of the election by then. All of us can look ourselves in the mirror and say, we did everything we could, and everyone who supported our candidates did come together. And I was pleased to see and continue to hear Senator Sanders continuously encourage his supporters to be united and to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as our next leader. So, sometimes we don't get everything we want, but we keep trying. Let's not give up. It's the process here. It can happen. It might not happen overnight. Some of the things that people can feel proud of that now are becoming part in a cautious way. Biden is a centrist. And final thought of this for me, having been in elected office, one of the questions that is not unfair to ask, that is a fair question, is how are you going to pay for it? It's not an unfair question, because we all would like everything, but there has to be a way to pay for it. And how do we do that? It's a fair question to ask. It's not a trick question. It's not a question intended to. As I think we come up with those answers, then we can move to improving the healthcare system and education and all those other things. But I invite those folks who were supporting other candidates to join the fight. Let's be together.
Yeah, and I want to add a few things here, because I definitely want to underscore some of the things that Walter said. First of all, just going back to the voting and the margins, right? He talked about how he won by just 29 votes. In Virginia, there are about 300,000 Latino voters, and those 300,000 Latino voters can make a difference, particularly in the redder parts of the state. So it's really important. In the story that Walter shared about having lunch with a friend and that person telling him that they didn't vote, unfortunately, it happened a lot last election. And we cannot assume, we cannot believe the polls. This is going to be close. It's going to be super close. And we need to show up this election. And Biden needs to win by a landslide. Obviously in Virginia, but also, as you guys know, in other states like Pennsylvania, Florida, etc., Arizona, which are also key. So I would say that, this is a moment where everybody has to show up. The second thing I want to just underscore about people who supported other candidates. If you care about the policy, if you care about change, all you have to do is go to joebiden.com and look at the plans that he has presented. And I know that he has this reputation of being centrist and just with establishment, because he has been with establishment for many decades. But when you look at his plans, he actually has embraced and adopted many of the ideas that progressives have been pushing for a long time, whether it is on climate change, whether it is in criminal justice reform, or even on immigration. So, one of the things that I struggle with is the people don't believe Biden is progressive, but when you see his platform, when you read the details of his agenda, and which, by the way, he also explains how he's going to pay for it, you see that a lot of those ideas are there. You see that that's where he wants to get to. So my argument is, if you care about the policy, if you care about people's lives, there's no comparison between Trump and Biden. There's nothing there. If you care about just making a difference in people's lives, and you care about what the policies is, then you have to support Biden, because his policy prescriptions are in line with the progressive wing of the party. So that's one thing. The last thing I want to say is that I actually had the opportunity to work in the campaign for a little bit, and I actually had the opportunity to engage with the VP as well as Dr. Biden. And I can assure you that, I've never met a person in power that had so many just regular people call me and tell me, this is who he is. And when you see all those, testimonials and all those stories that people have had experience with him, it's all true. It happened to me when I engaged with him, in the sense that he's somebody who's super empathetic, who really understands and really cares about, what people are going through. And I believe that's such an important characteristic to have as a leader. And I also want to underscore Dr. Biden. She's a teacher. She, in fact, teaches at Nova, College, right? And, she is, she's such, and she chose to do that while she was second lady for the whole time they were at the White House. And that's someone who's really committed to her career, and somebody who believes in young people and really just contributes in that way, and really understands the educational challenges we have. And of course, we as Latinos, the majority of kids under 5 are Latino. So she really understands the importance of investing in young people. So I would just add those 3 points that, people who have supported other candidates, we get it, we understand. But at the end of the day, it's about the policy and about the changes that a Biden-Harris administration is going to implement. And when you look at the policy, at the path they have laid out, and the blueprint that they have, it is consistent with a progressive agenda.
Vanessa, that's a really great point on policy. Talk a little bit about the issues that are most important right now to the Latino community, and how Vice President Biden has a plan to help tackle those.
Right. I'll start a little bit just talking about COVID, because I think that's really top of mind for our folks. And I know that Walter has a lot of experience on immigration, so I'm sure he will chime in then. But, Vice President Biden really came out very strong when it came to sort of what needs to happen around COVID. Obviously, providing free testing and treatment for everyone. Doesn't matter your status, just because you're an immigrant doesn't mean that you should not be able to have access to some of this. So that is a key piece, right? Making sure that our folks, and particularly our essential workers, and as we know, Latinos are disproportionately represented in some of these industries that are essential, whether it is caregivers or grocery workers, or people that work in our meat pack plants. So you see that he has a very robust plan around making sure that people have access to free testing and treatment. He also, again, supports very much the support in terms of our small businesses. And as we know, Latinos really are opening small businesses at higher rates. And as we know, small businesses have also taken a big hit after COVID. So there's a robust plan to making sure that we are supporting our small businesses. I think another issue that's super important and central is education. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Biden, as an educator, I think is going to have a lot of influence when it comes to the issues that the vice president is going to be paying attention to. And there's, as part of their plan, they are proposing additional funding to Title I schools, which are those schools, of course, that have a higher representation of Latino kids. They also have promised a lot of investment in preschool access, which is key to close the achievement gap, as well as obviously more opportunities for post-secondary education. And I'm sure, Walter, you probably want to speak about the immigration piece, but I think those are sort of the key pieces of his agenda.
No, yeah, absolutely. There's so many, and I think the best thing, and I know that it sometimes sounds a little corny, but go to joebiden.com, and Joe Biden came out with a Latino agenda, the Biden Latino agenda. If you go to the website and do that search, you'll see a host of things that are specifically set of policies that are with the Latino angle. Those policies, of course, are for all Americans, because what do Latinos want? A good job, a good economy, education, opportunity to move up, stability, safety, immigration reform, a good environment. All of those things are addressed. And, we've come down to some specific in the state of Virginia. there are many people who have temporary protected status. Those are folks who are given that status so they can stay here, work, earn a living, pay taxes. And so we have one of the largest groups of Salvadorans in Virginia that have contributed enormously to our economy by the millions of dollars, right? So folks like that would have, through a Biden platform, he is proposing that the very first week he will introduce comprehensive immigration reform through a representative or representatives in the House of Representatives, in Congress, as well as the U.S. Senate representatives, and submit legislative packages that will do that. Now, that will address a whole bunch of things that we have on this current president. I don't even want to say his name. The separation of families. Remember that? Putting kids in cages. Remember that? In all of the zero tolerance things, that look, we need to have an immigration system in order at the border so folks we have an orderly system. But for heaven's sake, when someone is denied by lawfully the asylum hearing and just pushed out, and then the politics of fear and threat of immigration customs enforcement, I mean, that's going to change under the Biden administration. And I know those like to attack and say, "Oh, let's go be amnesty." No, it's earned legalization. Folks who have committed a crime, they're simply going to have to do the time, and folks who have earned it will be given a fair process so that they can have a path to citizenship. Those who have DACA, absolutely, that will be part of the process. People with temporary protected status will, and not just Salvadorans, we have hundreds of thousands of those, Haitians, and other folks who also need an opportunity to show that they've been viable members of our community and society. Many of them have, when we say mixed status families, many of them have children that were born in the U.S. And so they have U.S. born children. And you imagine separating them from the families after? It's horrible. No, we're not going to do that. So there are other things. For example, there are at stake. The reputation of the United States around the world is dismal right now. People are not taking it serious. People laugh behind the back of our current president. And for some of us, we want a president that would improve our relationships with Latin America, with the whole world, with our ally, who's not fighting with our ally, for heaven's sake, who's not saying love words to dictators and cozying up to them and saying, oh, great, and never challenging Putin and all that stuff. I mean, come on. So, for the Latino community, someone that has constantly used language that creates fear and empowers other people to look down, and it does have a consequence playing the politics of fear. That's why, a few weeks ago during the Democratic National Convention, when Joe Biden said he's going to challenge us to the best of us, and contrary to what the current president wants to get the worst of us, we can't have that. We need to move forward, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the answer for us, and we invite all Latinos to get behind it and be part of the change that we need in this country.
Walter, that is a great way to end our show tonight. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.